Okay, so here we are looking at the elements of design, the elements of art. So we have line, shape, color, space, form, value, and texture, and these are all located hanging on my wall in the art room. These are all the things that you use to create art, okay? So in all artworks, you're going to use at least one of these. Now, in some artworks, you use all of these. Some you just use maybe 2 or 3. So I want us to explore these individually, okay? So you see here, I started with line. So line is one of my favorite elements of art, just because I think it's just so beautiful to look at. And lines can just take you interesting places with your imagination and your creativity. So see here, I started this design here. Alright, so all this has come out of my imagination. I had no plans before starting. I just started making a curved line and then I went with it. And that's kind of the fun thing that I like about line. So with this one, I want you to use actually a marker. So that way, if you make a mistake, you have to figure out how to make it work. It's one of my favorite activities. And doing these line exercises, just drawing different kinds of lines and different designs, is really a kind of therapy. A lot of people use it actually to like calm themselves down and take a breath. So from here, I'm just going to keep on adding on. I have no clue what this will end up looking like. It's just, I'm going to go for it. Okay, so I think I'm complete with my line design here. So what I want you to notice is I just added a little more. I don't want to go too crazy. I really like what I came up with. I think this is a strong design. And what you should notice is I took the time and I thought about where I can make some heavier lines so they aren't all the same weight. So this one I made thicker so it looks a little heavier, and that adds to the charm of the design, making some things that are thick and some things that are thin. That's called variety, and yet it all still works together beautifully. Okay? All right, so now next comes shape. So shape is fun as well. I've already actually sketched out a shape design. So you want to think of your shapes. You can use geometric. Those are shapes that have names like squares, circles, triangles, rectangles. Or you can think about organic shapes. Those are the shapes that don't have names. So for instance, I'll draw an organic shape here. That's an organic shape. I always call them, they kind of look like blobs. Okay, so what I want you to notice here in my shape design is I did a little bit of overlapping. Things that are in front, things that are behind, using organic and geometric shapes. I did outline this with a little skinny Sharpie, and then if I would like to, you can take the time and color these in. I have colors. So color, you get to choose how you want to represent color. Basically, we just need to show some color. So you can think of a rainbow, or you can draw an object and color it in, showing all the different colors. So I'm going to draw a paint palette, I think, and use that as my object to show color. I'm going to make it go off my edges because that always looks more interesting when things go off your edges. What I'm doing here is I'm coloring in my negative space. That's the empty space around my object, so it stands out. It's giving it emphasis. So with each one of these, I want you to really think like an artist in every one. Each one should be its own little masterpiece. Okay, next I'm going to do form. So form are 3-dimensional closed objects. So what I've done here is I've drawn the basic forms that we think of, geometric forms. So I have a sphere, I have a cone, I have a cube, and here I have a cylinder. So I'm kind of creating this still life of these forms. Notice how these look 3-dimensional. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a little bit of value. Remember, lights and darks of value. We'll get to that down here, to help show their form a little more. So I'm just doing this with a Sharpie here. And I'm just creating strokes, little hatch marks, to help show the form. Alright, so there is some form. Notice how they look 3D, and I added cast shadows to them. So it looks like they are creating a shadow onto a surface. Three-dimensional, that's what form means, 3D. So anything that you can draw to look like it's popping up or anything, that's called three-dimensional. Okay, so now down here with value I did here showing the darks and the lights. So what I want you to do in this one, you can use a pencil or a colored pencil for this activity, is I want you to do a value scale. So a value scale is when you go from dark to light with an easy transition from each section. So you don't want to go like dark and then light. You want to go dark, in the middle, kind of light, to light. Okay, so I'm going to start here with dark, and I'm just going back and forth with my pencil. And to get a heavier dark, you can change directions. So you're pressing hard with your arm, but you also want to change directions. You never want to press too hard. You're going to break your pencil or you're going to ruin the texture of your paper. That means it's a bit too hard, and that's distracting from the artwork when you're all finished. So as you move across this box, you want to ease up on the pressure. So you want to lighten it a little bit. So by the end, you should be at white. Okay, and if you feel you need to go back to make some things a little darker, that's fine. Again, a soft transition from each value. And there we go, and that's showing value. So that's good, especially if you're doing things that look 3D. Value is always going to help, because things in real life all have value. They all have highlights and they all have shadows. So these two, really think about both of those when you're creating art that you want to look realistic. Okay. Next one is space. So space is showing how things can be far away and how things can be up close. So I always talk about foreground, middle ground, background. So I've created a little landscape here, and I'm showing space or depth by putting something that is close to the viewer. So this tree is going to be the thing that's closest to the viewer. That's my foreground. Here I'm drawing a little cottage that's a little further away, and notice how this cottage, if it's further away, is going to be smaller. And also notice how this cottage is higher up on the paper. So foreground usually starts at the bottom. This would be my middle ground, it's a little higher up. And then background is anything that is above your horizon line. So this right here is my horizon line. This is where the ground meets the sky. So then all these clouds up here will be considered my background. Okay, and then I'm probably going to use colored pencils to color this in here, because I need something pretty small to get into these tiny shapes. Maybe I'll make this little sidewalk. Sometimes I add details later on about what'll look good. Okay, so I'll probably use colored pencil to color that all in. Okay, and the last one we have here is texture. So what I've done is I've actually separated this box into two parts, because I want to show you two different types of texture. So the first one is texture that you draw. If you noticed here on my space one, kind of hard to see, but I added some texture in the tree trunk, those little lines. That is texture. I'm trying to show you the way that that trunk might feel, okay? So with texture, you can draw texture. So like if I want to draw bricks, and I want to show that texture on a building or on a sidewalk or something like that, this is what I would do. I would draw it. Okay, and then you can color those in, obviously, to make them look a little more developed. and that you actually thought about your artwork. So when I color in brick, I like to make some of my bricks darker, some of my bricks lighter, because if you ever look at brick, there's a whole bunch of colors going on in there. They're not all the same, and then I actually like to incorporate a few different colors here. And I change pressure, some dark, some light. Okay, and then the second option for texture is to use texture plates. So those are these thingies. If you feel them, they have a texture, and what you do is you pick up your paper, put it under, and these can give really cool effects, and these work well with crayons or colored pencils. I wouldn't use these with marker, and all I'm doing is rubbing with the side of my pencil here, and you're noticing a texture coming through. So these are always fun to play with when creating art. The only problem is sometimes we get a little messy because it's hard to stain our lines, so you just have to be careful and go slow with that. Okay, so here is our paper showing our elements of art or elements of design. These are all the things that you're going to be using throughout the year in your artworks. Like I said, sometimes you'll use just one or two, sometimes you'll use all of them.